I'm pleased to be interviewing the candidate running for the People's Party of Canada in Burnaby South, Lynn Thompson. How are you doing today?
I am doing so well, Michael. I'm honored to be with you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. So, what got you
I have a
involved?
bit of a busy office, I just want to say, going on with people coming in and out. So if you hear a little hustle and bustle, we're in full campaign mode.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, what got you involved in politics, and why did you decide to run specifically for the People's Party of Canada?
Yeah, that's a really good question because this wasn't expected, right? About a year and a half, I was just dancing through the tulips. I had two national daily television shows. I'd been a broadcaster for a long time, and I just thought I'd be doing TV, for the rest of my life. Then I was alerted to the sex ed curriculum that was going on in BC, and they were telling little boys that they could be a girl and little girls that they could be a boy. It's gender fluid ideology. And at first, I honestly didn't really believe it. And I started investigating and put a lot of effort in. I met with a trans activist, Morgan Auger. He's the vice president of the NDP here in Vancouver. And I found out that, while we had a 6-hour dinner, and I was fully able to embrace that someone can be trans. I think in Canada you can be gay, lesbian, transsexual, pansexual, polyamorous, or any of the 102 genders, and you can even be heterosexual as an adult. But I just don't think you should teach kids that they're gender fluid. I think that is not a concept or anything you should present. So as I began to get into that, I began realizing that there is a lot of backlash against any Canadian if they dare stand against that. And so I actually was targeted fairly heavily, and that was a shock to me. I didn't see it coming. I was already, I was too far into my stand against this before when all of the attacks started coming. And so consequently, after that, they targeted me by calling my work and calling the CRTC, Vision TV, Joy TV, people like that. And so I realized, wow, our world has changed because when I was young, I had never even heard of this. And that's what brought me to politics was I thought, I have raised my children and I have given to this nation, being a great mom and also being a television personality and bringing hope and faith and all those kinds of things. But now I'm concerned about what our nation is facing. And then I started seeing the crazy things that are going on with the Liberals, with all of the debt that is now being heaped onto our children. And I thought, who's going to stand? So I began speaking on, being more outspoken on things like that. And I found out that Canadians are afraid to speak up, that they're actually very quiet. And so I'm not. I don't know why, but I'm not. And it doesn't scare me to speak. Maybe I've been doing that an awful long time, right? So that's what brought me here.
Interesting, very interesting.
And
So,
you did ask me why the PPC, right?
yeah, why the people? Yeah,
Yeah.
why the PPC? Why the People's Party of Canada, and not
So
the
that's a
NDP or the Liberal or the Conservative Party of Canada?
mhm. Well, and that's such an interesting journey as well. My whole life, I voted for the Conservatives. I believed they were my party. I stood with what they stood for. So when I really felt that I should put my name forward to run as member of Parliament and do my part, I tried to run with the Conservatives, and I tried to run in two ridings: New Westminster, which is right beside Burnaby South, and Burnaby South. Even when I was rejected from New West, I had friends in Burnaby South, dear friends, who begged me. They were on the EDA of the Conservatives. They said, "Oh, we know you got rejected over there, but just come and run here." And what I found out was why I was rejected, even being called a star candidate with both EDAs. So that's electoral district associations. Both of them said, I mean, she writes, she speaks, she's good with media. She's great. But the higher ups in the Conservatives, they could see that I'd had this track record of fighting the sex ed. And of course, it's not that they don't agree with me, but it was that they didn't want a problem. So this was before Maxime Bernier had left the Conservatives. They didn't want a problem with, somebody who was a little bit controversial. They just wanted to slide into the 2019 blue wave, right? They're going to win. And so when they, they acclaimed another woman from Ottawa who didn't live in the riding, she got no signatures and didn't fill out her application. And I did all of the things that I could write. They acclaimed someone else. Then I said, well, that's not good. And I was very, very sad. Then I went to the Conservative Convention in Halifax, and Maxime Bernier made his announcement. And I remember thinking, that is interesting, right? Who is this guy? I hadn't really known about him as much. And so then I met the friends from the EDA in South Burnaby, and they begged me, as I said, and so I put my name forward again, almost just like, well, okay. And again, I was rejected. The EDA had favorited me over Jay Shin, who is the current Conservative fellow. And so I was sad that I was not received. And I again thought, well, I don't know what to do. I really felt strongly. Sometimes, Michael, there's something in our lives where we absolutely know that we know that we're supposed to be doing something, that there is destiny literally waiting. And I felt that. So I thought, well, if I feel this and I feel this strong, I'll run as an independent. I mean, it wasn't my first choice. It costs a lot of money to run as an independent. And I don't know how I'd do it, but I thought, well, I'll just try. So I began to get all the signatures. You need 100 signatures to do that. And I began that process. And then I met someone who was with the People's Party of Canada. And they really liked me. They had been following me and said that they really supported my stand and who I was. And for that right there, that was a shock. Because, it seems like if you garner any attention that's negative from certain factions, that you can easily be ostracized, or everyone's too scared, so politically correct that we can't stand up for our thoughts and our rights in this country. So I was amazed by that. And within 4 days, I had a brief call with Maxime Bernier, and we talked. And I sensed immediately a connection. I sensed that there was something really powerful about what he was trying to do with Canada, that he was trying to put Canadians first, that he was putting Canadian values first, and that he was honoring individual freedom. And individual freedom was what I had just been up the year before against, because during this time, there had been so much backlash against me that my job for my national television show felt that, maybe I needed to pursue this call, and that, it didn't really fit in with their calm. Again, nobody wants all of this drama. So it took a while. Maxime, we had a great call, but it took a while. I had to, fill out paperwork, go through a process, and, some interviews. And the more that I learned about the People's Party of Canada, the more I realized that this is the only courageous option for Canadians. He is the most courageous politician that I've ever known in my whole lifetime. And he is willing to speak on issues that are, controversial, and that people generally in leadership feel, oh, they shouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. He's so strong that way. And Canadians are dying for a leader like this. They are wanting someone that they can believe in. And so I was very pleased when they accepted my application, and we proceeded with this. And it's been a real journey.
Interesting. So what does your party stand for? What are the values that every candidate has to hold in order to be part of the People's Party of Canada?
Right. Well, I have our brochure here, which has look at all of these party platform things that it has. If you try to get this much information on what a platform is from any other party, you will not find this kind of detail. You absolutely will not.
Wow.
It's like they don't want to say, everything they stand for. So, in big letters here, we've got reducing taxes, strengthening immigration. So, Maxime Bernier firmly believes that we can't keep allowing these illegal, border jumpers to keep coming into our country and threatening our, our security and all that's being done in that way. He also believes in being tough on crime, abolishing supply management. Now, supply management is the artificial raising of, the dairy cartel, basically, as he calls it, where, dairy prices are artificially inflated in Canada. And, abolishing it would put about $500 back into the pockets of everyday families. So that's awesome.
Is that every year?
Is that what?
$500, is that every year?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, because we pay far more for our dairy than they do just over the border in the States. And so, he talks a lot about being a proud Canadian and, being proud of our heritage and just putting Canada first, not always putting out millions and millions of dollars to other places in the country when we have homeless, we have our veterans that we should be caring for, we have our aging parents that are precious and need care as well, right? And so some amazing thing is reforming the equalization payments in the provinces across the land. Stopping Motion 103, which is the Islamophobia law. I mean, we just believe that anything should be able to stand up to criticism in a democracy and be able to withstand that criticism in order to have good thought and come to good determinations about what's right or not right for our country. And also repealing Bill C-16, which is the transgender bill, which has allowed, men into women's spaces. And so that's a very courageous stand to take that back and abolishing interprovincial trade barriers. It's interesting we make it so hard to trade in between our actual provinces, right? This should be easier. And protecting our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And probably, I think you may want to know what my favorite one is, and probably protecting our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I believe we're under attack. I do. I believe that there are factions, and coming from even some of our other parties, we've got the Global Compact on Migration that Trudeau has signed with the UN that will allow about 1 million refugees to come into our land over the next 3 years. This is not protecting us. This is, ruining our sovereignty, opening our borders, not knowing. And then he wants to silence media, to even talk negatively about it, and putting all of that money, $595 million, into media, trusted media, right? So that's probably not you, Michael.
No.
You can't trust what you're going to say, right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And we don't want to be his trusted media. We don't want to be bought off, right?
Oh, for sure.
So these are some of the great things. And of course, they're all on our website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca.
Wonderful. Why, now you're up against a very well-known candidate, Jagmeet Singh. If he loses, do you think the NDP will have to find an interim leader to fill his spot?
I think they will. I don't think he'll be able to survive it. From what I've heard, he was specifically told by his party that if he doesn't win, that that it's not going to be good. So he has a lot at stake. Yeah.
Oh.
I feel for him in that regard. It's an awful lot of pressure. But some of the decisions he makes, some of his stands, supporting Venezuela, some of the way that he's gone about that, I just don't know what to say. I don't agree with him.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
So what type of support are you getting in Burnaby South, and which party or parties do you think you'll be drawing supporters away from, or voters, I should say, away from, to the PPC, the People's Party of Canada?
Well, we have people from all parties, the NDP, even the Greens. We have Liberals, we have Conservatives, a lot of disenfranchised Conservatives who really felt that the Conservatives have let them down on the grassroots values. And so we are sensing that there's just been a groundswell of people. And they're saying that because the People's Party of Canada just stands for some really basic principles of supporting Canadians and putting Canadians first. I mean, it's just revolutionary. Like, we should be doing that, right? Instead of going billions and billions of dollars in debt. So I think people are really, really happy about it. And I have tremendous support heading into this last couple weeks. You can't get confident in a way. You have to press as hard as you can towards the finish line. You have to just let the adrenaline, kick up a notch, and you have to, uncover every possible, voter that you can, and turn over every rock to be sure that you're doing everything you should. for
Interesting.
the win, for the big win.
Yeah, the big W.
Yeah.
As you mentioned in the past, you were a conservative. Do you feel that the People's Party of Canada, your party, will be taking votes away from the Conservatives and NDP, and in essence, allowing Justin Trudeau to keep a majority in Parliament?
Splitting the vote is the number one thing, that we hear. Even people who want to vote for the People's Party of Canada, and they say, but how are we going to do that? We're splitting the vote. Unfortunately, we are, and that is democracy. Unfortunately, the Conservatives have allowed and have so mismanaged and disrespected their grassroots that we do have this situation going on. And people have expressed this sentiment to me that they actually cannot stomach to vote for the Conservatives. Like, whatever it means, we have to vote for values. When is the point in our history when we say, I just can't support a party because that's the party I always voted for, but rather it needs to be the party that best represents what we actually believe and stand for. And Maxime Bernier is that leader. The People's Party is that party. They stand for family values and have stood with me, have run a candidate like myself. That takes tremendous courage. He believes in putting Canada first. He has objectives on how to reduce the debt quickly because we have a real problem that we're left with after the Trudeau government. He wants our sovereignty to always be in place, to value, to be patriotic about Canada, and to believe in its greatness. And so there just isn't another choice for me. I am so grateful that I was rejected by the Conservatives. If I would have to behave like Jay Shin the other night during the debate, where he cannot speak his own mind and his own thoughts. He has to conform to the party discipline. And actually, it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing for all of them, what they've done and how they have isolated a group of voters. And that group is coming to the PPC, and we're looking for a big win in 2019.
Interesting. Yeah. So I guess you didn't leave the party. The party left you in that regard.
I feel that, yeah. And then I am gladly now saying and embracing this new party. I think this is the hope of Canada. I do. And young people are loving this. And to actually see a strong person standing up for their values, even under criticism, right? Because the media is never friendly to us because they're all, trusted media of Trudeau. And so they're not friendly towards us. And yet we just keep on growing.
Okay. Yeah. That very interesting. A little bit south of the border, what are your thoughts on Donald Trump?
Whether you love Donald Trump or hate Donald Trump, there's certainly been some really good things that he's brought about. I appreciate that he has taken some strong stands for the protection of religious liberties, and I appreciate that about him. I've watched, as the recent shutting down of, government there and all of that. It's I wouldn't want to be him, but I admire anyone who will stand for their convictions. And in life, you can't always agree with every decision that someone makes, but I admire a strong person who doesn't cave in to political correctness.
Yeah, that's certainly right about President Donald Trump. He doesn't care about politically correctness at all.
No.
So if you get elected as Member of Parliament for Burnaby South, what do you feel the top issue in your riding and then the top issue in your country that you would like to help fix?
The top issue in my riding is I think we need tougher sentencing on crime. We've had the tragic death of Marissa Shin, and she was a 13-year-old girl right in this riding, murdered in Central Park, where I spent many hours growing up. And real tragedy. The alleged murderer on trial at this point, is a refugee. And I just believe we have to have tougher sentencing and we need safe borders. So that'll be a top priority in anything that I can do as a member of parliament to protect. I hear from the constituents, as I'm door knocking, that there's definitely a rise in crime. Certainly, I talked to one man who's had his house in the same place for 40 years, and it's a completely different neighborhood now. And they used to know all their neighbors, and now, they hear of break-ins and things like that going on. So, we want to embolden and enable the justice systems to work well, and the police to be funded well, and then on a level of I just believe that freedom must be stood for in this nation. And so I think it'll be quite a learning curve, and I'm looking forward to figuring that all out. And with Maxime Bernier, he knows a lot about it, so I'll take a lot of cues from him.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Well, Laura Lynn Thompson, thank you very much for the interview. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day, and
Appreciate it,
good
Michael.
luck in the campaign.
All right, thank
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks.